Okay, good afternoon. This is Julie Kramer, Marketing Director for Coretek Services, and we're happy to be hosting Imprivata. They will be conducting a webinar, as you saw in the invite and signed up, OneSign for Healthcare. And I'd like to introduce the speaker for today, who is Brent Midwood. He's the Technical Product Marketing Manager at Imprivata, and he's responsible for showcasing how Imprivata solutions can improve healthcare provider productivity and enhance the security of the information systems they use. He has over 15 years of experience as a software and network engineer on various information security projects and federal government at large companies such as Microsoft, as well as some smaller startups. So he joined the marketing team a couple years ago at Imprivata. I think he saw what a great solution they have. As I could tell from the number of people that signed up for this webinar, it's a popular product, and I think there's a lot of interest around it. So Coretek is the local channel you could use, and we'll talk more about ourselves the last couple slides. But anyway, so the webinar today is about providing an overview of Imprivata's One product line and how it can provide fast, secure access to the information that the caregivers in your enterprise need to work with on a daily basis. So I'm sure this will be great information for you all to take away, take notes. We'll send some links after, and with no further ado, Brent, if you want to take it from here.
Thanks, Julie. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. So let's go through and take a look at the agenda about what we're going to talk about today. So I'll give you a little bit of a background on Imprivata and some of the solutions that we offer within the healthcare vertical to enable clinicians and to help IT departments, secure access and sort of increase the productivity of their end users. So we'll talk about all the stuff that you see here, touch on things like SSO, authentication management, and then some security features like walkaway security. We'll talk a little bit about EPCS. So if your enterprise is moving towards electronic prescription of controlled substances, we have some solutions in that space as well. And then we'll talk about the services that Coretek can offer, in conjunction with Imprivata to improve your enterprise productivity. So we'll answer some questions at the end for you. So let's talk a little bit about sort of the challenges and what's driving the products that we're going to talk about today, right? So I think most of you in the audience are probably fairly familiar with these. Really, we sort of understand that healthcare has a definition of mobility that's unlike any other industry, really, right? So we talk to nurses and doctors that tell us they sign into desktops and applications, a minimum of 30 times, 40 times a day. We've even heard stories of up to 70 to 100 times where clinicians are actually having to type in usernames and passwords. And if you think of it from a clinician perspective, that's really super challenging. Not only having to do just the actual memorization of all those passwords, because they always happen to be different for the various applications these folks are using, but also because it interrupts their thought processes and it doesn't allow them to really focus on their job. And their job is to provide patients the care that they need. So really what we want to do is solve some of those problems for the clinicians, right? So that's where Imprivata steps into the room, and we provide some of these products and services that can help you improve your provider's productivity. And obviously, one of our strong partners is Coretek Services, and they can help out with the implementation, the planning, and the end-to-end project management of deploying these systems and these products that Imprivata offers. So our strategy is to figure out how we can help you execute and ensure your success for improving provider productivity so that they can focus on their patients. Really, if you think about the transition to electronic medical records and that sort of thing, it's been a journey, right? So clinicians are used to things like paper charts, which are great from a clinician standpoint, right? They can write it down fairly easily. It's not really too much of an interruption on their thought process. They can fold it up in a paper folder, carry it with them from room to room, and it's really sort of convenient for them. Where paper charts lack are, it's tough because you lose control of the information sometimes, really. So that's why these legislative drivers, HIPAA meaningful use, all that sort of stuff came into the room to push towards moving towards EMRs. And those are tough on providers. You know, it's easy to move information around in an EMR in a controlled manner, but it's tough because clinicians aren't typically used to, you know, accessing the information that they need from an information system. And so that's the solutions that we're talking about, are to try and help them, you know, ease access to that information or make that access a little bit easier. So Imprivata, you know, we've been around for, you know, a little more than 10 years now, and we're one of the leaders as far as, you know, authentication management, SSO, desktop virtualization, integration, that sort of thing, within the healthcare industry. So we have over 900 healthcare organizations that are our customers, and, you know, on a daily basis, we serve up to 2.6, you know, almost 3 million actual care providers are using our, you know, our solutions. Where we really stand out is the strategic partnerships that we have. So we partner with all the major EMR vendors and virtualization vendors that are out there for these solutions, and the analysts know it. So, you know, we're number one in KLAS. We've been number one in KLAS for the last few years, for 2 years running. We have the exclusive endorsement of the American Hospital Association, and we're rated strong positive by Gartner. So there's certainly you know, a track record there of success with our solutions in the healthcare vertical. So let's talk about some of the solutions. So Imprivata OneSign is our flagship product line, and really sort of the goals of Imprivata OneSign are to increase adoption of EMRs and improve the workflows for those caregivers. So what our goal is to do is to save clinicians time every day and allow them to focus on the patient's care. So you know, we've done some case studies where you can save clinicians up to 25, you know, even 45 minutes a shift just by giving them that tap-and-go access, that fingerprint access, you know, and the roaming desktop experience to the information that they need. And we also, you know, not only do the clinicians benefit, but the IT folks benefit as well. So, you know, I won't go into a lot of hairy detail about the architecture of our solutions, but really, it's a very simple solution to integrate and deploy. It's easy as far as maintenance goes, and it allows your IT department to comply with the privacy and security regulations that are driving them in their enterprises as well. So let's talk a little bit about sort of the main focus of Imprivata OneSign, at least from, you know, a typical installation standpoint, which is single sign-on and authentication management. So there's two pieces here, right? So the authentication management piece is getting a clinician access to their desktop and the apps that they need quickly. So that might be with the tap of an existing building access badge. It might be with the swipe of a fingerprint. We sort of call it no-click access to the patient information. So that's the authentication management piece. And then once we get the clinicians to their desktops, whether those be physical or virtual, there's the SSO piece, the single sign-on piece. So that gets the clinicians access to any of the applications, any of the clinical apps or business apps that they might need to use, no matter how many usernames and passwords that they have. So it's a true single sign-on service. It's not a sync service or anything like that. You know, it doesn't matter to us if the applications are hosted internally or externally. All of that is designed to give the care providers instant access to all those applications and the information they need very, very quickly. So if you think about it in a healthcare setting, that's a lot to take on, right? There's a lot of pieces within your hospitals, within your enterprises. I'm sure you even have clinicians that are working from home that share responsibilities in remote clinics, that sort of thing. So there are pieces of Imprivata solutions that you can deploy in all those locations. So you know, there's different workflows that your clinicians are going to have to deal with inside a patient room versus in an emergency room. The nurses are going to have different workflows than the doctors do, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you deploy Imprivata OneSign and what kind of workflows you're trying to optimize depending on where you roll out the solutions there. You know, things like shared workstations versus virtual desktops, things like CPOE or EPCS, all those transaction reauthentication workflows, that sort of thing. The point I guess I'm trying to get across here is that Imprivata OneSign goes beyond just single sign-on. So a lot of folks immediately when they hear OneSign, they think, oh, that's the single sign-on guys. Well, it goes a little bit more than just beyond, you know, it goes beyond the single sign-on piece and hopefully after today's presentation you'll have a little bit better idea of all the possibilities of the workflows you can optimize by using Imprivata OneSign. So one of the big drivers, I think, that many of you are probably considering in your enterprise is the move towards desktop virtualization. I don't think I actually have a slide in this deck that talks to it, but we've seen increases every year in the trend towards deploying virtualized desktops in some form or another within the healthcare space. So whether that's virtualization of full desktops, whether that's virtualization of applications, the trends are just continuing. So what you're looking at here is, sort of our fun little graphic of a typical hospital situation. And if you look, sort of the point I'm trying to make here is look at all the different places that all these providers have to log in with usernames and passwords. So they're logging in patient rooms. They're logging in at nurses' stations, at physician lounges, anywhere in the hospital, and they have to log in multiple times. I mean, if you've ever spent any time on a hospital floor, you know how much these folks move around and how much they get called away for various situations, emergencies. They're very mobile individuals, and so what we try to do here is optimize, making that access to that information quick, regardless of where they are. So the trend towards sort of addressing those needs is desktop virtualization. So there's some benefits out there, such as from a security standpoint, you get to keep all your PHI, all your protected health information in the data center if you're going to a full virtual desktop. So you can keep that data off of the endpoint. There's the follow me desktop experience that the clinicians get. So whether they're working inside their patient room or whether they're, they move over 5 minutes later to a physician lounge, they can pick up working right where they last left off. From an IT perspective, you also get some benefits as far as management goes. So you get to keep this virtualized infrastructure in your data center. You get to control it. You have centralized auditing and logging. There's all sorts of benefits to IT here, and then there's flexibility on the endpoint side of things. So you get the thin and zero client options if you want to try and keep your endpoints low from a cost of ownership standpoint. There's some really slick sort of thin and zero clients that are out there that Imprivata supports, and you can have that endpoint processing power if you need it. So if you want to have a shared kiosk workstation, utilize things like our facial recognition walkaway security features, we support that as well. So there's a lot of options that you have as far as desktop virtualization goes. And the benefit that you get from us is the fact that Imprivata has the strategic partnerships that no other IAM and SSO vendor has. You can see all the logos that are down there and the folks that we partner with. So we partner on both sides of the fence here. We partner on the software side with the virtualization vendors such as Citrix and VMware. We also partner with the hardware vendors as well, and we're the only vendor that's built into the zero clients that are out there today. So if you buy a zero client and you're, for example, using a VMware View infrastructure, if you buy a Teradici chip zero client, we're built in. So literally all you have to do is have our clients, have the license in place, and you can turn us on for those zero clients. Nothing needs to get touched on the endpoint. So it's a pretty neat architecture there. Prove ID Embedded is our relatively new, I guess we launched it about a year ago, architecture around the Linux-based thin clients. So if you have things like the new Dell Wise devices or the HP T-Series or the iGels, that sort of thing, that are Linux-based, we have an interesting architecture there where we roll out a Prove ID Embedded module to those Linux-based devices and get you access to the desktops from there. And the architecture of that is beyond the scope of this webinar, but if you have any questions on that, certainly we can get you some more technical detail there. So let's jump back to the hospital for a minute, and let's follow somebody around. So if you look at the nurse, she's in our patient room, and with Imprivata, all she literally has to do is tap her badge to a reader that's at the workstation, and she gets access to her virtual desktop and can start charting the information under her ID, to get the compliance aspect there as well, the patient safety aspect, and she does her thing. Then she gets called away and she decides she needs to go work in the lounge over on the other side of the hospital there. She can actually tap her badge at that workstation in the lounge and have her session follow her. One of the neat things that we have is that when you tap into a different workstation, you can have the system configured so that it locks it automatically locks the session that she left. So if she gets called away in an emergency or just plain forgets to tap out, you have a reduced risk of loss of information because that session can be automatically locked when she taps in somewhere else. You can also do things like configure a tap over so that if another provider walks up to a workstation and taps in, that first session is securely locked and the next provider can pick up where they last left off their session. So, you know, she can go around the hospital wherever she needs to go, and all you really need to do is train your providers to tap in and tap out. And you get that follow me desktop experience that's provided by the virtualization vendors. So let's see. Let's talk a little bit about return on investment. So we did a case study with one of our customers. Actually, we didn't do the case study. Nucleus Research did. That talks about some of the financial benefits you can get from moving towards a virtual desktop infrastructure. And you can see the numbers that are down there right now. This is available on our website. They adopted Imprivata, South Shore adopted Imprivata OneSign, and their payback was just over a month, which it sort of blows my mind a little bit. And the benefit that they get out of the system over the course of a year is over $5.5 million. So they're getting you know, close to 700% ROI on their investment, which is pretty impressive. So if you have any sort of you know, drivers where you need to go to management and say, hey, you know, here's a reason why we want to move to VDI. This is some great material that you can use to make that happen. One of the other things, and this is one of our facilities that is a Coretek customer, was Munson Medical out in Traverse City, Michigan. So they're a 391-bed 3-hospital system, and what they wanted to do was automate meaningful use workflows across computers and their mobile devices and sort of give a consistent user experience for all of their clinicians. So what they did was move towards virtual desktop, and they went to Coretek and said, you know, how can you help us out, and how can we get OneSign in here to make that work? So what they did was they developed a virtual clinical workstation model. And really what that's all about is giving you fast access to that information via roaming desktops and single sign-on. So really what they're doing is increasing the provider's productivity. You can see those sort of benefits on the left side of the slide there. And then from the IT perspective, they're also reducing the management overhead for IT to deploy these solutions. So reduction in device costs, reduction in software licensing fees, you know, changing the refresh cycles. It's all about benefits for the IT shop there as well. So what they did was they settled on an integrated solution from Coretek that met all the needs of all the use cases that they had across their environment, and it did it all on one platform. So that takes advantage of, you know, Coretek's expertise in going with an end-to-end solution and deploying that solution, and it takes advantage of the Imprivata OneSign product line's capabilities for providing virtual desktops and access to the applications and that sort of thing. So you can find this on this case study on Coretek's website. I think we might have a link to it later. I'm sure that Julie can get you the information for that. And there was also, we found, I believe it was very recently, an article was published in Information Week about this case study at Munson Medical as well. If you Google, you know, Information Week, Munson Medical, you should be able to find that article as well and get the full detail. So that was sort of the SSO AM authentication management overview. Let's talk a little bit about securing the information. One of the ways we do that is with some walkaway security features. So really, you know, one of the big problems that you have inside of a healthcare or, you know, a hospital, a clinic, that sort of thing, is when providers get called away for various reasons, or, you know, they're dealing with a lot of things in their head and they forget to log off. So unsecured workstations and unprotected PHI is an issue in the healthcare space. You know, there's patient safety issues that are there as well, so the risk of charting under the wrong ID, that sort of thing. That's all, you know, ties back to the unlocked workstations, the unlocked desktops, that sort of thing. And training only answers so much. So you also want to put technical controls into place to help out your providers when they get called away, you know, or when they're concentrating on something else. So there's a couple different ways you can do that with Imprivata OneSign. So there's sort of two pieces here, and I'll talk about both of them in a little more detail. The first, actually, I'll address fade to lock first because I think I have those slides next. But that's our passive inactivity detection mechanism. So we do things like monitor, keyboard use, mouse use, which applications are running. We can actually tell, do you have your EMR open? Do you have your PACS app open? Do you have your radiology app open? That sort of thing. And from a workflow perspective, we look at all that activity and say, hey, I think the provider walked away. And what we can do is sort of time down a screensaver and fade out the screen. And if the provider's still there and just doing something else, we can configure a slow timeout so that the provider notices that it's locking. It's a slow fade out, and they can open it back up. So it's all configurable. Then there's the secure walkaway piece, which is our active presence detection mechanism. And this is facial-based re-authentication. So I'm sure there are probably a few tech folks on the line here that are familiar with facial recognition. We sort of need to make a distinction here. This isn't primary authentication via facial recognition. So for instance, you're not going to have a database of 2,000 faces in your application and have folks be able to just walk up. What this is doing is protecting the information after they log in. So picture this, a provider walks up, taps their badge, and there's a camera that's watching their face when they tap their badge and while they're working, and the provider does their work, and then they walk away, or they turn to treat the patient, whatever they happen to do. They face away from the camera. At that point, the Imprivata OneSign software recognizes that they're not actively engaging in work on the workstation anymore, and it locks the screen. Usually you would configure this to a fairly quick timeout, 3-5 seconds, depending on your enterprise, maybe 10 seconds, that sort of thing, and the screen locks. Then when the provider comes back and faces the camera again, it re-authenticates them and unlocks the screen. So there's some really neat technology that we've taken advantage of over the last few months to make this a reliable system. So we've got things like infrared sensors on the camera now. We actually use LiDAR, that's stuff that the state police use to catch you speeding down the highway. It's a laser-based mapping of your face, so we can do 3D mapping, and the recognition gets really, really good because all you're doing is comparing the person that's in front of the camera with the last person that tapped in. So you get a really good re-authentication rate there, and it's really easy. It's really, honestly, it kind of blows my mind sometimes. All you have to do is look at the camera, and all of a sudden your desktop's back. You never had to touch a keyboard, move a mouse, anything along those lines. So it's neat. I think the next couple of slides that I have here are sort of showing a little bit of what the mechanism of fade to lock looks like. So if you can tell, this screen is sort of grayed out a little bit, and that's sort of mid fade out. So this is what would tip off the provider that, hey, my desktop's going to lock in 2 or 3 seconds. I'll wiggle the mouse or I'll look at the camera, whatever that might be. And then this would be the lock screen that you get. So it's completely configurable, for your enterprise's logo, that sort of thing. You can put up a message there that sort of tells the user what's going on. And then there's a timeout so that, if all I want to do is get back into my workstation here, all I need to do within 5 minutes and 19 seconds is, hit a key, move the mouse, that sort of thing. After that timeout occurs, then you're going to have to re-authenticate. So that's when you need to re-tap your badge or something along those lines. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about these next couple slides. This is a glimpse into the OneSign UI. The point to take away here is that all of these things are very, very configurable in your enterprise. So what we want to do is, and what Coretek wants to do is work with you in your enterprise to figure out what workflows you're concerned about, what the parameters around those workflows are, and make sure that you can enable your clinicians in the best way possible, because every situation is different. And so we've designed the system to be fully configurable. So you can do things like, show a warning after a specific amount of time and then lock the workstation and that sort of thing. So that's sort of what I want you to take away from these slides here. And, I think I put in here, a lot of times folks sort of get hung up on language. We give you the ability to change the language around your, your notifications. We've had customers that use it for, actually letting folks know about things, like this little example here, like, hey, there's a Joint Commission audit today. So you can use the system for sort of dissemination of information, if you will. And we want to keep situational awareness going for the providers. So really one of the biggest issues is that providers sometimes have the opportunity, not by their own fault, but sometimes they'll charter under the wrong ID. if they walk up to a workstation, they're focusing on the patient, they don't realize that they're not the person that's logged in, you could have issues with someone charting under the wrong ID. So we have the ability to throw things like pop-up balloons that say, hey, are you Claire? If not, you probably want to tap that person out because you can tap over them and then tap back in and you chart under your ID. So we want to give the clinicians as much information as they can handle in an easy, user-friendly manner so that they can get the job done in a way that's safe for the patient and is efficient for them. Secure walkaway. So this is the active presence detection that I was talking about earlier, the facial recognition stuff. You can see that little box in the middle. If this isn't a live system, obviously this is a slide, but you would see a face that's in there. It's an outline of sort of a head that says, hey, my camera's looking at me and it recognizes you and that sort of thing. So just a little glimpse into the UI and what these systems look like. So with that, we'll jump into the next topic, which is electronic prescription of controlled substances. I'm just going to grab a drink of water. And so EPCS. There's sort of a before and after story with the EPCS, right? So the DEA, has mandated that for controlled substances, for electronic prescription of controlled substances, you need things like, two-factor authentication, that sort of thing. And the driver behind the legislation that's pushing EPCS is, time, money, and patient safety, right? So think about how you have to prescribe controlled substances today. So a clinician will write a script on paper. That script not only gets given to the patient, but maybe it gets faxed to the pharmacy. The pharmacy has to call back to the clinician to verify that the prescription is correct. There's the possibility of errors with paper-based prescriptions. I mean, there's a whole host of reasons why you would want to go to electronic prescription of controlled substances. Some of it's around the efficiency for the clinician because all they have to do is click a button. Some of it is around the patient experience. So if you can get an electronic prescription out to the pharmacy, the patient doesn't have to stand around and wait for a paper prescription to be filled, that sort of thing. So all around, there's benefits out there. And you can see some of the numbers that I put on the slide there. We had 960 million controlled substance prescriptions in 2011. Obviously, we're a few years past that now, and that number is just going up, just with the amount of care that's out there, as well as the amount of time lost to interactions with things like verification, phone calls, and that sort of thing. So I think the number was something along the lines of, EPCS is trying to save somewhere between, 150 and $250 billion over the next 10 years within the healthcare vertical. So there's a lot of driver there. So within your enterprise, if you're considering to, and you will at some point, be considering moving towards EPCS, what do you have to think about? So the DEA has thrown out these federal regulations that sort of are the oversight, if you were, for EPCS, but there's state implementations for each of those situations there. So there's going to be a whole bunch of different implementations depending on where you are. So you have to understand those sort of issues. There's, what's the state of my EMR systems with respect to EPCS? So some EMR systems are farther down the line than others are, so you have to sort of understand what your EMR is ready for. Then there's the local pharmacies. I mean, we have customers that are all set to go with EPCS, and some of their patients, can't get their prescriptions because the pharmacy in the area really isn't ready to go. So there's those sort of issues as well. And then there's the two-factor authentication stuff for the care providers, and that's where Imprivata and Coretek come into the picture, because we can have the solutions in place that will enable you to put in an EPCS solution or move towards an EPCS solution and still comply with those two-factor authentication requirements that the DEA has put in place. So just a little bit about that. The modalities that the DEA has approved for electronic prescription of controlled substances are shown on the left there. So things like hard and soft one-time password tokens, fingerprint bio is approved as well. Full public key infrastructure smart cards are approved for DEA or by the DEA for two-factor for EPCS. Things that aren't approved, which there's sometimes a little confusion there, I think like just regular old smart cards, so the things you would use to tap into your virtual desktop in a vanilla situation, or things, like swipe your card to get into the building or to get into the emergency department, that sort of thing. And then the over-the-air things, so like one-time passwords over text messages, those are not approved. So, typically in an EPCS situation, we'll have folks that use a combination of prox cards for virtual desktop access, and then at the stations and for the personnel that are doing EPCS, they'll have fingerprint readers or something along those lines, or RSA tokens, whatever that might be. So this is when you want to give Coretek a call, give Imprivata a call, and figure out how we can help you move down the road, because it takes some planning, move down the road towards a successful EPCS implementation. We're the only vendor out there that supports all of those modalities that the DEA allows, so we can get you the mix and match that you need throughout your enterprise, because there's going to be different folks in different departments that need different modalities. And we support the major EMR vendors that are EPCS ready at this point. So we are certified for an EPCS solution with Cerner. Same thing with Epic. We also have we recently announced a partnership with Dr. First that's going to allow us to provide EPCS solutions for some of the other EMR vendors that are out there. So really, if you have questions on this, this is not something that I feel like I can adequately give you all the details on in a presentation like this, but give Coretek a call, give Imprivata a call, and we can help you down the right path to get towards EPCS. So I'm getting down to the end of my presentation here before I toss it back to Cindy. But I just wanted to give you a couple of sort of thoughts from some of our customers. So Mid-Michigan is one of our customers, and they actually train their physicians now on the 3 Ts, which is tap, turn, treat. So the physician walks in the room, taps their badge on a reader, they turn towards the patient, they can begin treating the patient. In the meantime, their workstation starts up, gets them to where they left off, and they can really focus on their job and not have to worry about the technology. Johns Hopkins refers to it as tap and go. This is sort of an industry standard term these days. I think walk up to a workstation, tap in, and you just tap and go, right? We've heard folks say that it's as easy as a paper chart. From a clinician standpoint, our goal is to have it be as easy as a paper chart, right? This was a quote, I believe it was from Bruce Hall over at, I want to say Augusta Memorial, or Augusta down in Virginia. His IT department and his end users actually said this to him. Finally, you're doing something for me rather than to me, which is great, because IT gets a bum rap. I've had a long career in IT, and a lot of times the stuff that we have to do really sort of makes it hard on the end users. And this is actually something where you, as an IT person, can have a win in your organization, and you can get those end users excited about something. So that's kind of neat. And with that, Cindy, if you're on the line, I think I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about how Coretek Services can help out with this stuff.
Hey, Brent. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, all set.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brent. That was great information to share. And I got to tell you, as a partner out there that's implementing solutions like this, we absolutely love working with Imprivata and what you guys bring to the table. And, it just speaks so loudly about the culture there and how you push the envelope, that even though you're out there alone in the magic quadrant, you still continue to push the envelope on features for the users like fade to lock and secure walkaway and EPCS, custom workflows and things like that. So we really appreciate the partnership. And the other thing I appreciate is how remote these webinars can be. I know that you're over there in Boston and I'm here in Michigan, and I'm actually sitting in the office of one of our great customers, Orthopedic Associates of Michigan, with all of our great friends here, Rob and Corey and Jason and John. So I just had to give them a shout out since they let me use their office for this. Anyway, so let me tell you a little bit about Coretek Services. We are a nationally recognized, industry-leading, healthcare-focused IT consulting company. We are truly a national company. As you can see here, we have customers coast to coast. We design custom solutions for any size healthcare organization, from small community hospitals all the way up to national health systems with tens of thousands of seats. Julie, you can go ahead to the next slide. So we were formed in 2005. Our initial focus in 2005, and has stayed that way, has been healthcare. And we approach healthcare a little bit differently. Even though we are an IT company, we approach IT from the end user perspective. Our specialization is in virtualization and infrastructure, but because of the approach that we take from an end user perspective, it kind of sets us apart and makes us a little bit different or unique as an IT company. In working with Imprivata, we were one of only 3 partners chosen to work with Imprivata to deliver their services, and happy to do that. So if Imprivata's, oh, could you have it over there? Sorry, a little technical glitch on this side. Sorry about that, everyone. So we're one of 3 partners certified to implement Imprivata solutions. The other thing that's unique and different about Coretek is our agnostic approach that we take to things. So we don't come in and try to forklift things out of a customer's environment. We really take the time to understand their specific workflows, understand the technologies that are already in the environment, and then work together to find ways to leverage and optimize what may already be in the environment. We are the only company out there implementing solutions like this that can truly say we have a 100% success rate from pilot to launch. Any virtual clinical workstation solution that we have started as a proof of concept and taken to pilot, every one of them has gone successfully 100% to production. The other thing about these solutions, and this was something that Munson brought to light, when we first started working with Munson, which is one of the case studies that Brent mentioned, you know, their first thing was to solve for the clinician challenge that they had, which was the multiple logins and the long logins and the multiple applications and all the passwords to have to remember. So we started down the road with them to just solve for the clinician challenge, but then in working with their IT staff, we ended up putting in a holistic infrastructure that supported all use cases across the entire environment, including some special pockets of radiologists and cardiologists that had very demanding legacy applications that required some very special touches that, you know, some third-party tools had to be a part of and so forth. But at the end of the day, what they ended up with was an infrastructure that supported the entire organization. So what that did for them was bring down their costs, improve their manageability, drive efficiencies, and in the case of Munson, actually, they again, they embarked on this road when they realized that they were really failing their users. They had the IT staff surveyed their users, and in the beginning, they had between a 20 and 30% satisfaction rate given to them by their user community, and that was their wake-up call that they needed to do something different. When they were done implementing the solution, their metric of success was the user feedback, and so their first survey out in the field after a fair amount of production was at over 80% satisfaction rate. So that was key to them. The other thing that sets Coretek apart is our focus on the speed and the efficiencies of these solutions that we custom build for clients. Because of that, we recognize that sometimes there's challenges in the environment. I'll spell some out for you. So sometimes when your EMR is remote hosted and there's a double hop scenario, that double hop scenario adds some latency to that speed. So we recognize things like this, and that every second counts to a doctor or clinician that's waiting for that patient record to come up. So we've worked with specific software virtualization technologies like Citrix and VMware to create proprietary custom tools that increase those speeds, or I should say decrease those speeds, and bring us quicker launch times. We've also worked with specific EMRs that are either remote hosted or locally hosted to increase speeds and efficiencies and to build even very, very custom sort of workflows, again, for maybe specific pockets of users. So like I said, we've been doing virtualization and infrastructure since 2006, since the very beginning of this EMR path. And again, the whole company is driven by the tagline, project success, no exceptions. That was the mission statement at the inception of the company in 2005, and that mission statement has not changed in 10 years. And it's still the mantra that everyone at Coretek lives by, is project success, no exceptions. And for us, that metric isn't met until until the customer says that the project has been a success. It's not by our standard, it's by our customer standards. And I think that's what makes Coretek strong and thriving today is the focus on our customers and focus on great partners like Imprivata as well. Go ahead, Julie, next slide. And that takes us to the very end of the presentation. So we at Coretek would like to offer anyone who's listening a free assessment. Let us come in and talk to you. No obligation at all. We know that these things take time, especially in healthcare. The cycles that you go through, it takes a year to look at technologies and figure out what you want, and then it takes another year to get it into the budget, and then finally you get to do some of these things. And we understand that and recognize that. And we're there for the long haul. We're there to be a trusted advisor, a true collaborative partner to walk through this long process with you, because it is a complex thing. It affects the bottom line. There are a lot of aspects to think about. ROI, we can help building ROI and TCO models and that sort of thing. So anyway, happy to help you through that process and be your partner through the whole thing. And for more information on that, you can send us an email at that address there. We also have a YouTube video out there that walks through a demonstration of what Brent talked about, and this solution that I'm referring to also that we call the Virtual Clinical Workstation. And don't worry about jotting this down. Anybody who is on the line today will be receiving a copy of the slide deck, and that link in there will be active. We'll also be sending you the case studies that were mentioned in the webinar today, as well as the link to the InfoWeek article that Brent mentioned. And our next webinar is coming up in August, and we're going to be talking about Texas Tech and what they went through. And there's also Munson did a webinar for us also, and it's on the Coretek website. Dale Adkins is our customer there, and he did a really great job talking about the specific challenges with their Cerner, with their users, with their doctors, and so that's a worthwhile one to get the recording on. So thank you so much for attending today. Really appreciate it. And Julie, I'll turn it back to you to close it up.
Thanks, Cindy. Great job. Great. Thank you, Brent. And I don't have anything else. That's how I kind of wanted to end it. So good job ending that with the follow-up that we'll be sending you all. If you have any questions, I mean, we're taking questions right now. If you want to put anything in the chat window, actually, I can also, let me try to unmute you guys. Let's see if I can do that. All right, so I'm unmuting you guys too if you want to ask any questions. All right. Okay. Well, thank you, and hope to talk to you all again soon. Have a great afternoon.